So here's the latest photograph from Siam Berry, right? And there's a lot of MPs stood outside holding a banner up. I don't know when they had this photograph, but it looks like it could possibly be the MPs that signed Jeremy Corbyn's open letter, because I recognise some of them from that list, although not all of them. But you've got, Iqbal Mohammed's there, and I think Jeremy Corbyn's there. You've got Carla Denny, Siam Berry. Got quite a few. There could be possibly about 50 of them. I haven't counted them all. But they've got this banner and it's got loads of logos on it, and then defend our right to protest. I'm sure that they don't fully understand what the right to protest is. Like, it is the promotion of the public and private business from Parliament. You can't really get rid of it when Parliament exists. It's not possible. They can only try to curtail it with acts similar to the Tumultuous Petitioning Act, but there was always the Tumultuous Petitioning Act came about because of the Civil War and the Restoration on Charles II, and he did lots of things that he shouldn't have done, like, put tolls on the A1, not Great North Road, stuff like that, because he was annoyed that, with William the Conqueror, so he was like vengeance. They stuck his conqueror's head on the top of Westminster Hall. And he did things like the Tumultuous Petitioning Act. It's questionable whether he could have done it or not, because, courts aren't supposed to intervene in Parliament, right? It's also questionable whether the election petitions in the courts currently are lawful, because there's a really big financial barrier when elections ought to be free. Now, this is the thing, right? There's a lot of concerning things going on at the moment, right? The law, these people, right, like in this photograph, these MPs, they're all really, really, really adamant and focused on getting laws made, right? They're like, they want to get certain laws made, whether it's assisted dying or, repealing the Human Rights Act or God knows what. They're all like, how can we solve these problems is by making more law to make people do things, right? Now, that's what Keir Starmer wants to do. Keir Starmer believes that by enacting legislation, he can control people. So Keir Starmer wants to control people and control the country by making certain laws or abolishing certain things. He wants the power to control, by saying you can't do this, you can't do that. But the problem is that we've got to a stage now where the populism wave of social media and people's opinion and the ability for, popular people are getting the audience and getting people to listen to them, and other people who are less important or, boring, or even if you've got something important to say, not getting heard or any attention, right? Opinion and populism is carrying the main narrative and deciding what the attention of the country is focused on. Most of the country is focused on TV game shows and entertainment, right, and not on important things. These MPs and some of the big hard-hitting channels, the big players, the big channels, are getting all the attention, and they're getting to shape and set the narrative of what the country talks about. And a lot of them haven't actually really got anything important, deep or intelligent to say, right? And they don't want to listen to anything deep, important or intelligent. They just want to go with whatever the main narrative subjects are, whether it's, these grooming gangs or illegal immigrants or whatever. They managed to keep a very small number of big subjects in the mainstream when there were loads and loads of really serious, important things to sort out. And they managed to keep, it's like primary colours, all the colours are made out of the primary colours. They managed to keep everyone's attention on, maybe 3 or 4 subjects that really there are a lot more important things to deal with and sort out than those subjects. But it's almost kind of like TV game shows get everyone's attention after they come home from work, sit down to put the box on, and they're just hypnotised by it when they could be doing other important things, like reading books and learning things or going places, right? Now, this is the thing is that there's a problem in Parliament, I think, with the fact that the MPs are wanting to make and change law. Now, all these MPs don't always agree with each other. Like, for example, here we've got Iqbal Mohammed. He was against assisted dying, but then here in the same photo, you've got Carla Denyer and Sian Berry. They were for assisted dying, right? But then you've got people like in this photograph who are wanting to keep rights and the right to protest. Then you've got people in this group, a lot of these are opposed to facial recognition, right? But some of them support it. So a lot of these MPs don't necessarily agree on the same subjects, but at least they agreed on the subject, you know, like with the prisoners who wanted to be released, right? So they don't always agree on everything, but there's a real problem with them understanding the law at the moment, like with Article 2, which is really explicit in the Human Rights Act that you can't, government can't have any processes that exist for killing people except through criminal procedure. You can't have it in civil under that law. If you want to, then you've got to change that law and then you can have it. But at the moment, it says you can't have it. So what's the point in doing it when it says you can't do it? But they still want to do it anyway. Now, and we're getting this with a lot of MPs. I don't think a lot of MPs have been, some of them have been in Parliament a long time, right? And others haven't. I don't think that a lot of these MPs actually understand and know the law enough to be voting on the law, right? And deciding what we should do, because they don't really actually properly know what we can and can't do, particularly when it comes to things like, you know, Charter of the Forest and lots of other. They're making more problems before we've sorted out problems. More problems are being made currently than problems that are getting resolved and sorted out, right? Now, at the same time as there's definitely either they don't care, right? Either they don't care that what they're doing isn't possible and that it's nonsensical or it's illogical or it's not coherent with the current law. It's like, you know, the law says this and they're doing something that the law says they can't do. So either they're not bothered, they don't care, or they can't understand, right? It's one or the other. Now, if more and more MPs are ignoring the law, disregarding it, and voting on a law that's incoherent, they're making and manufacturing more problems, right? And they actually don't care about the law. But yet they're passionate about getting these laws made, whether it's assisted dying or CCTV, digital ID or whatever. They're getting these laws made that they're voting on and really wanting to pursue. And they're hoping that other people follow and obey these laws, yet they themselves are ignoring laws and not following them, right? So I think it's creating havoc. And at the same time this is going on, Keir Starmer, he's like, right, how can we control the country? How can we get control of people and make them obey the law? But, you know, but this is the thing. He's wanting to put more laws through. He thinks that he can get the police to have more powers and, you know, get the country under some authoritarian grip. And you get rid of these prelates in Parliament and have more multicultural religion and stuff off his best mate, you know, Sadiq Khan and that. But what Starmer doesn't realise in thinking that, okay, let's get a grip on everything, let's get some authoritarian, the iron fist on everything to get control of it with this legislation that he wants to put through, what's actually happening is that his MPs in Parliament and the other MPs are totally disregarding the law, ignoring it and putting stuff through that you can't have, right? So as he wants to legislate to squeeze his iron grip, more and more legislation has been ignored and disregarded, right? Which, when you get to a point where they're just going to end up ignoring and not listening to anything that they don't want to listen to, they're going to block, ban anyone, like no one will get heard on social media who they don't want to listen to, and they'll just be the ones who are talking at everyone and to everyone all the time, and everyone listens to them, and they'll just tell you how it is by their opinion. And it doesn't even matter whether their opinion is logical, correct, coherent, honest, truthful, or factual or not. It's basically Simon Says, right? So it's like Kim Leadbeater says that, this assisted dying bill is what we should do. And, there's a bit of law. So what? Right, hop, skip, and a jump over that Article 2, nothing to see here, right? It's like, it's make-believe, right? They're getting into like storytelling, and they're telling the story of what's going on, but the story isn't the truth, but they don't care because it doesn't matter anymore. I mean, it does not matter. So what? Like, so what if they're not coherent, and so what if they're talking absolute tosh, and so what if it's their opinion, if they can get away with it? So it's like a new. It's like, Will o' the Wisp or something. The narrator of the cartoon. It's like they're narrating what's going on, and this will tell you how it is. It doesn't matter how it really is because we're going to tell you how it is. And if you don't agree with us, tough. Like, we'll just turn you off, right? So, Starmer, we're going to end up in chaos, I think, because, you can't get an iron grip when, there's a lot of truth and fact being completely and totally ignored, right? Either we need to decide, right, are we going to start actually being honest and telling the truth and, according to facts, or are we just going to enter a make-believe? And if Starmer thinks that he can run a country through make-believe, like, David Lammy, I can get rid of grand juries. No, actually, the assizes, the circuit is the jury, right? He calls the jury, and you go around because serious crimes necessitate, that's what it is, right? So you have a circuit without jury because then it's not a circuit then, because on the point that is what it is, right? That's what the judgment of the peers is, because you didn't have the judgment of the peers without a circuit, right? Because you just had like the law of the land, right, and the customs. So it's like, I don't think Lammy knows what Magna Carta actually is in chronological historical order to inventing the assizes and what it actually is. He's doing things that he's actually just making it up as he goes along, right? And this is the fact with a lot of things now. We need to. We should have some sort of convention parliament. We should call a special convention parliament where they're not allowed to make new laws or pursue a manifesto or agenda, or they can't go after all these digital ID and all these things that they'd like to have. And they've got to we should call a special parliament that has to sort out all the inconsistencies in the law and the contradictions, and fix everything, repair it so it's actually coherent, and the things that you can do that are done and the things that he says you can't do, you can't, and then get to a place where we can say, right, now we've sorted out all the issues and problems, and then we end the convention parliament and then start a new one and say, right, okay, which direction do we want to move into to the future? What direction we're going in now that it all is correct and makes sense as in proper order, right? But Starmer don't want to do that because he doesn't care. He's not interested. All he wants to do is control, manipulate, and get future agendas through for these plans they've got for us, like with this digital ID and what these platforms going to do and taking over the world, New World Order, all this stuff, facial recognition, when, the tech, the progress, the tech, the progress, the tech, the progress, right? Not actually, truth and fact, Truth and fact is not important to a government that's got power, that's for sure. It's got an iron fist. So, now, the thing with, so it's difficult now because some of these MPs, I agree with them on things like opposing digital ID or saving our rights. But then I don't agree with them on things like assisted dying. This is like Cyan Berry that I'm talking about now, for example, right? So now I can't see now, because they're not even following the election law, right? I think that they're making some really big mistakes at the moment, because like they've got their election material on their MP page, or if it was on a telephone, then it would be ridiculous. It would be really obvious that they're breaking the law if they put election ads on their telephone for Parliament, right? But yeah, they got them on the social media for Parliament contact. And, everyone's copying election material, like reform stuff. Farage broke the law to get where he is. I can't vote for reform because Nigel Farage did talking pints and he cheated, and no one brought an election petition, and Parliament won't act on it. From a petition to Parliament on controverted election rule. They won't do anything. The Electoral Commission won't do anything. So I just can't vote for reform because Nigel Farage is an election cheat, and like the Green Party, I called them out for not having the right information on their placards. It turns out that a lot of the placards do have the information on, but it's in really small print on the bottom of the border, and it looks kind of like a shadow. But I have actually checked some of the real photos, and there are some photos where they don't have the proper material on there, right? There are some photos where they don't have the material on there. But it actually doesn't matter about that, because like it's to do with piracy and copyright, and it's not fair use, and the whole online thing is totally illegal with elections. I'm not wrong about that. I might have been wrong about one or two Green Party placards, because I couldn't see through the photograph, wasn't high enough resolution to see what was printed on it in the small print. But there are, how do you know that people aren't making those Green Party things at home, and it just happens to have that information on the bottom that was from a master template copy, and it wasn't even really that printer who printed them, We don't know that. That's why it needed a police investigation, I think. But anyway, so, I can't vote for reform. I don't know how I'm going to vote, it could be independent, or it could be one of these other parties. I'm not sure if I want to vote at all or not yet, but something needs to be done, because we can't have Starmer. And our council has broken the law anyway. We've got scheduled monuments that had crimes and offences committed against them 2000 to 2004, and the whole stories were in the newspaper, but no one knew what the law was, so it was just like a normal planning breach, but actually what it was crime. And then our council have been working with these people ever since. It's quite concerning. But, let's say that something happens, and the Labour Party get called out on it, and there's some justice served. What's going to happen? We're going to end up with a Reform UK Council when they've been totally breaking the election law. We don't really know what the hell they're going to do with the place, particularly if you fall out with Nigel Farage and Tice. Are they going to, I don't see Tice and Farage as vindictive people. But I was kind of like quite neutral with them, but I'm like, just a minute, they're not supposed to be doing this. How have they got so famous? Because they cheated. And then I was like, I can't support this because it's not right. What about all the independent people? So I really don't know where it's going to go with the voting at the moment. And there were so many things that, like, I don't know what the hell is Lammy doing with his jury thing, right? That's not lawful what he's doing. And then there's the whole thing with Shabana Mahmood, and she was acting to make legislation by putting something in the schedule of an act, but yet it's not an act of a public authority to do that, but yet she got called out in court because the court can call out anything if it's under EU law convention, right? Yeah, but Parliament could be being called out all day on convention, right? And that would be a severe disruption to Parliament, wouldn't it, right? If every single person in the whole of the country started bringing cases against Parliament for violating convention rights and things that they're doing in Parliament and acts they're making and MPs' actions, it would severely hinder and intervene in the work of Parliament, right? And that's the whole point of why we've got a constitution where the courts can't intervene in it, right? So, there's something severely questionable about the whole model for it. The best thing about that Human Rights Act really was that right to privacy, but it's not been upheld at all whatsoever. In fact, we're in a complete invasion of privacy, and it's absolutely not been upheld in Europe. Europe is going to be protected. The rest of the planet Earth, I don't think are, but Europe definitely isn't being protected at all. And then we've got these massive platforms looming over, which the government seem very keen to merge with eventually into some kind of super government, and not a coherent one that has to follow any law, like any reason or no reason type governance, like, where we don't get to know the information of these big corporate entities, but they get to know everything about us, right? And they don't have to answer any questions, and, they've got very strict, rigid policies where pretty much like they're not going to do anything, when you complain. So I've just got deja vu now. Anyway, so we need to, something needs to be done about this, like coherency, like coherent correctness, intelligence, knowledge, truth, fact. But yeah, the government are the ones who are saying, oh, like misinformation, like, the one in the platforms about misinformation. It's actually the government and the MPs who are doing worse than misinformation, because they're actually, it's not about misinformation, it's like their lack of understanding. It's like the information is correct, right? The information is correct, but they can't understand it, right? So you've got a lot of information there, right? And, it's not misinformation, but like, in order to do something with it, you got to understand it. But even when information is not misinformation, when it's correct, the MPs don't seem to be able to always to understand it anyway, like, Article 2 of the Human Rights Act. So it's like, that proves that it doesn't really matter whether, you should be able to work out yourself if something is misinformation or not. But there's always been misinformation through all of history, people misleading people. You can check things now on the internet anyway, research it and check it. It's really concerning, particularly when the government have been putting out a lot of misinformation through, like, the e-petitions answers. What's happening at the moment, with private bills? No one's doing them. But yeah, that's one of the main things you'd have thought, that people use privilege for private bills more than public business, right? Because you got to, if you're doing private bills, it's taken more seriously, and your newspaper adverts, if they got to be upheld, and it's a lot more of a detailed process in standing orders, whereas public petitions are more free and easy, but they're not taken seriously because we're all street urchins. But anyway, getting back to this David Lammy thing with the juries, right? This is the last point now. Look, right, it's clear that the grand juries were called and they did the investigating work, which the police normally would do, and for the indictments, obviously there probably would be some correspondence with the sheriffs and local bailiffs and so forth, right? But apparently, once they did the Met Police and it was a professional force and deemed a lot more professional and capable of investigating things to a higher standard as supposedly than grand juries were taken less seriously, and then they just had them rubber stamping everything, apparently, just for a ceremonial thing. And then now we don't have it. Then they got rid of the grand jury, and now we only have the petty jury for the verdict. And then now David Lammy wants to take that. Now, this is the thing. They believe that the grand juries, the random public, aren't calling the random public off the electoral register to come and investigate crimes. They would think that it's pretty incompetent now, right? The police would say, well, they've not trained, they haven't been to police college, they've got no experience, they don't really know these criminal gangs very well. We do, we've been studying them for ages. The police would say, grand juries is a terrible idea because, these people aren't experienced enough and they're not professional. That's what the police would say about having a grand jury now to replace the police, right? Having it on a voluntary random rota with just the police to operate the cells and be ordered to go and arrest this person or that person. Even if you had just the forensic department where the grand jury said, right, they ordered forensics to go do this or that if you didn't have a chief police officer, right? I suppose you need a chief police officer for like discipline, right? But look, I'm all for grand juries, right? But this is the hard truth, right? The Assembly of Parliament now, the MPs who stand in elections and get elected, right? The hard and upsetting, disappointing truth now is evident that what Parliament has turned into with its diversity and inclusion and, male and females and, different ethnicities and so forth, and other factors to do with, dietary and poor, diet of junk food and, Costa Coffee donuts and stuff like that. What actually the Assembly of Parliament, the Commons, has now deteriorated into, I would say, or it's not definitely not what it was in the sort of 17th century and 18th century, right? Not through the 1700s and 1800s. I think that what we've got is kind of like the sort of thing that the police think a grand jury is a bad idea for. So like the police now would say, well, if you get rid of us, the police, and you like just have the public, they would be rubbish at it. They wouldn't know what they're doing. They wouldn't know the law properly. They'd be quite crap, right? And that's swearing. And I didn't really want to say that word because I don't like it and it sounds horrible and I don't really want to repeat it. But like the police would effectively say, if you're going to scrap us, the police, and replace us with a grand jury, and they're going to do the investigating, they'll be useless, they'll be rubbish, right? Well, I actually think that's what Parliament are like now. I think that they're a bit rubbish, in the same sense that the police would say that, we can't have a grand jury now because they it would be terrible, right? But at least it will be fair and impartial, if not professional enough. But that's what Parliament's ended up like. But this is why a lot of people like Andrew Bridgen don't really think that the MPs in Parliament are running the country because, apparently Liz Truss was saying there's all these other levels up and up and up, and the security services and the executives and the departments who make people disappear, like the witness protection plan and all that, and the, Starmer's brother mysteriously vanishing, and the fucking Edinburgh railway station setting on fire, Royal Sign Manual, all these things, someone pulling strings, all these, Trump shootings and all these other CIA insider job stuff, right? Whatever, military industrial complex, the military, at what point were the MPs not really running the show from, or have they never really run the show from, when Parliament burned down and, Robert Peel just like, something me kid probably back for breakfast, right, oh, we'll have a new building. Well, I'll just have to arrange it that it gets burnt down then, and then we can build a bigger one, a new one, a bigger building, right, Because Andrew Bridgen believes this, he doesn't believe that the MPs really are in control or have a say. He's told what to do and what to say and what not to say, and told to shut up, and said he can have anything in the world if he does what he's told and all this. And even Liz Truss was sort of like talking on those lines. Is Tony Blair still really running the government, from his, Bonneville and headquarters or whatever, right? This is it, and I definitely don't think that the MPs really properly know what they're voting on, or when it comes to like, can we, they're not even questioning, can we vote on this or not, right? And I don't really think that it matters anymore. I don't think it matters, because I don't actually really think the law is going to matter for much longer, even though Starmer wants to use the law to yoke his iron fist and get the final clasp of the grip round, which I think it's going to be through social media, because now through business and corporate governance they can know everything about us and we know nothing about them, and they've got us accepting, consenting, submitting whatever they want. They're the ones who make all the technology. If we don't have it, we're screwed. And they are governing us now. And once they get some mechanisms in where they can implement the police into it, so if you don't do what they say, then the police can arrest you all or lock you up or God knows what else they're going to do, right? And you also can't say this or that or question or criticise this or that when it comes to religion or race or sex or gender. You can't be critical about it. So you're not allowed to be critical about male, female or whatever. Then you won't be able to challenge anything that is being done to us, right? Which is why I suppose they're all like, wanting to stand up for their right to protest here, right? Now, I don't want to insult any MPs, and I don't want any MPs to think that I'm picking on them and, calling them stupid and that's an insult and, how dare you and, really feel sad and upset about it or whatever. It's all like rhetorical, right? It's all rhetoric and it's all just like kind of like, summary, but, extremely generally. Look, right, I will point my finger, right? That MP, that woman, right, little Miss Plump, in that Michael Westwood debate on Collar General election, that is absolutely unacceptable, right? It's unacceptable. I don't she might have tears streaming down her face, but we cannot, that is not the standard of government because, it's not the fucking Paralympics, right? I mean, why don't we send disabled people to war? Why don't we might as well send the disabled people to kamikaze, flying the planes or whatever, or we might as well have a Paralympic army, with Prince Harry in charge of it, and then they can do service for the country and get their names on a war memorial, and they won't need to go for assisted dying because they'll be dying for the country. I mean, why not do that? And the army might say, there's nothing. We can't stop people, with disabilities from entering the army. That's discriminative, right? But look, when this is the Ed Davey wokeness, right? It's like no one's saying that people with disabilities should not be able to participate in at any stage. But if you had, a government, of, how about that member for the House of Lords from Sheffield, right? Who's blind, but he, was successful and still managed to become a member of the House of Lords and government, right? If the whole government, was like that, then we would be in trouble. We would be in serious trouble. And obviously, that's not the truth of it because, this is statistical things in society, like statistics, but you're allowed to make room for it. But it gets to a point where there's that much populism and focus on certain things that it makes it kind of into a thing like, they're trying to make it into not just acceptable, but kind of like predominant. Like, you see, I've got a disability now. I can't even pronounce predominant. They're trying to make it predominant, right? And there's something, it's not meant to be predominant. So, I don't really know what's going to happen with this situation, to be honest, because now also we've got this whole, everyone wants to be famous and get the attention and people know what they're doing, which is brand new. Only certain people were doing that. And I guess we're going to find out what's going to happen. I don't know whether or not the big platforms have already got the algorithms in and figured it all out or not, or it's going to be like some weird AI experiment where it goes wrong and then they want to hit the stop button and, turn it off. But they can't necessarily, well, they won't turn it off because they won't want to stop making money, right? Maybe the experiment will get the better of them because maybe their greed for wanting more money might go the wrong way for them, the AI, auto discussion thing kind of goes the wrong way in an experiment and they have to close it down. Maybe they can't close their own business down because then they don't want to lose making money. Like, oh no, maybe Google will like, get too big for itself, and maybe like, it will be like have to shut itself down because something terrible might happen to it or go wrong. I don't know. We don't know yet. But at the moment, look, I think we need to prioritize what's coherent, what is the truth and what is fact. And the government are pretending, they're saying, oh yeah, well, we're against misinformation, we're about facts. They're not about facts. If they were against misinformation and if they're about facts, then why are they evading in the Declaration of Compatibility for Human Rights, for like the right to life in this assisted dying bill? Why are they writing declarations which are evasive, which are not wanting to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about Article 2 and do a full essay dissertation on what is the meaning of Article 2? Instead, they'd rather hide Article 2, buried in a load of other stuff which is irrelevant to draw attention away from it and not question it, and then pull out loads of dubious Switzerland cases, etc., and not even really examine what the meaning of life is in the dictionary and what is the meaning to be alive, in the objective terms as well as philosophical, and accept, that they're not allowed to do it, what they're doing, unless they make changes in the law to the Human Rights Act, which they haven't done, right? And as the more and more they cover it up and lie, they're just proving that, they don't care about misinformation as long as it's, not them getting called out for the misinformation, as long as they're pointing the finger at someone else for misinformation, right? We're going to end up just with a Jack and Ori story government that is just going to tell you the story, how, their version of it, and no other version matters. Any other version, in fact, might be misinformation, even though, like, it might be absolutely correctly, mathematically perfect facts, like mathematically correct information, or technically accurate information. We knew that technically accurate information was not important to them during the pandemic, only the persons who wanted the narrative to be how they said it was going to be, right? So I think, this current government cannot continue unless it comes to the truth. But we can't get to the truth because there's always something more important, like distracting you from these really important truths that need to be confessed and admitted, like, all this grooming gang stuff, or, people coming with them boats, or various, religious issues and stuff like that. But there's always about three big issues, right, which managed to get all the whole discussion of the entire internet fixed on those things, even like, Russell Brand and the big channels, like, just going on these ridiculous, stupid issues when all it's doing is preventing us from getting really important, serious issues sorted out because they don't want to accept that there are them and that they exist, or that there's a problem, with things like, like that Article 2 of the assisted dying bill, for example, or, Lammy with his juries, or whatever it is, this Charter of the Forests, is supposed to be kept in perpetuality, but it isn't, our rights, upholding our rights and liberties. So, are we just going to have governments that, aren't interested in what they're interested in, I don't know, but with this current, if they don't when it comes to this election law, right, that Representation of the People Act 1949 is really important to do with a fair election, right? Otherwise, if you just ignore that and don't care about it, some serious things are going to happen now with the popularity, because that's kind of like what's sort of happening to Nigel Farage, right? And there are still all these people who are hooked on reform, all these local reform groups, and they still haven't woken to the fact that, it's corrupt and election laws. But they're the ones who are breaking the election law, right? So all these people who've got all these Reform UK groups and fan clubs, right, and who are standing up for local council elections, they're the ones who are breaking the election law, right? But that is reform. So it started with Farage and talking pints before the election, like, totally, like, no one challenged him on it. He cheated, and the whole party has been put together through cheating and to get his popularity. And then all the people who are coming forward to, like, promote the party because it's the next best thing are all breaking the election. They're the ones who are breaking the election law, right? So the whole reform's completely and totally like pirate, right? It's a pirate. It's like a pirate radio station. It's a pirate party, but a really popular one, right? Like they had, Johnny Walker or whatever, doing pirate radio. Reform UK is a pirate political party. It's created through piracy and cheating of election laws. Yet it's got really popular. Some Johnny Walker on a ship on Atlantic 252 or whatever the hell it is like everyone's listening to it, and it's like a really popular radio station, like commercial radio, right? But it's illegal, right? So I really, and if Parliament keep going along with it, the longer and longer Lindsay Hoyle and Parliament go along with the fact that Reform UK is legal, like, no, there's nothing going on here, this is perfectly right, but they've all got election material on their contact. If they have it on their phone message, then come on. I mean, look, right, someone needs to call this out. I mean, whether it's the Anonymous to make an experiment or some sort of investigation, right? I mean, if like, I'm not provoking anyone to do this, but like, this is the ideal experiment that we need, really. Like, we need some undercover, like detective, like, Columbo, like, sets up an experiment in order to, make a point at the end, whatever, to catch the criminal, right? We need someone to put election ads on all answering phone messages of the MPs, right? Like, plant them there one day, and then when everyone's ringing up, they're just playing the message, like, re-elect Jeremy Corbyn or whatever, and see what happens. See if everyone rings in and complains, hey, why are you playing election ads? And then that should be like putting the jump leads on a car and the battery won't start, just to get enough juice into it to get the MPs to fucking do something about it, Oh, no, we're not supposed to be doing that, like Mr. Viant, we're not meant to be doing that, sorry about that, apologies, oh yeah, we're not meant to be having election ads on our, contact pages, particularly not on our social media. Should we even be having social media on American platforms? It's just an experiment, like Westminster Hall debates. Oh, we're just messing around with an experiment on social media, breaking the election law, see what happens, right? This is the thing. Is it going to work or not? They're hoping they're going to get the upper hand from it and keep the grip on there, and chuck someone in the deep end of the swimming pool, and see if they'll sink or swim. That's basically what they're doing now. I think the House of Commons must know that they're completely and totally breaking the election law, and they couldn't give a fuck. Or at least in the sense that Nick Clegg's like, it's the platform's fault. They're the ones rushing forward, but we're just using those platforms, right? I mean, we can't keep up with this election law. But actually, I never followed the election law myself. In fact, Nick Clegg, don't care about election law because I'm the one who's breaking it. And I'm in charge of Facebook because of global world president, right? And we're inventing a new global government. That's why Tony Blair abolished treason, or else otherwise, if we're going for a world government, it would be treasonous anyway, right? Unless they're all under King Charles, and then it's against that. Then the Americans won't like that, will they? Because it's against the American Constitution, right? So, it's. Maybe is it a control blind experiment? Has Keir Starmer got control of the control blind experiment? What is going to happen? Are these MPs all going to sink or swim? Are they going to confess? Are they still not going to admit that you cannot have a government can't have law that ends life unless it is through criminal procedure while the current Article 2 is still in effect. And if you cannot accept that, there's something wrong with you. You can't accept the truth. You know, if you're in a room and someone, has got, a red ball, a yellow ball, and a blue ball, you're going to say, like, you might as well, be someone who's got serious issues because you can't accept that, there's 3 orange balls and a green one, right? But they're the wrong colours. You're wrong, right? And no matter how much you pretend that you're right, you aren't right, It's like how many cards I'm holding up. How many fingers I'm holding up, 1 or 3. It's like he's literally like that Big Brother, that 1984 film, and they're getting away with misleading the whole public, particularly on that assisted dying bill. So it's social media. They definitely rushed ahead too quick. It's kind of like it's that manoeuvre, isn't it? It's like from, probably around the time when they actually introduced the number 10 Downing Street website. I would have thought 2006. That's just when YouTube, Facebook, and everything came in. But I thought when all those websites emerged, and then they wanted everyone to go on Facebook. So they had the BBC selling it to everyone, digital ID. It's part of that. It's this agenda thing, definitely. It's part of the agenda, and they must have had a plan for the political side of it. We're going to use it, or use it or abuse it, right? We'll use it and we'll abuse it. What they're doing is illegal, and I think it's strategic. You got Nick Clegg's involved in it, Keir Starmer, David Cameron. There are no parties in this plan. Nigel Farage. Some of these people are in it for themselves, and then they're trying to say, what direction do you want the country to go in? I'm Nigel Farage and I'm trying to help you out and this is best for this country. Well, actually, the way that they're going in is corrupt. That's the way that it's going in. They're going into corruption overdrive where laws are being completely disregarded. Reform UK mega groups who think that they're going to save mankind from Labour are becoming into piracy. They're completely and totally breaking the rules to get there. It's going to be havoc while these massive platforms probably take control through the chaos through consent some accept. Are they going to wipe us out with a virus? We don't know. This is what Andrew Bridgen were talking about. It's a mess at the moment. It's a real mess, and while ever these MPs are just going out onto the grass with the big banners and saying, oh, well, we're going to put the country right and we're going to vote this law through and we're going to oppose that law and we're going to carry on business as usual. Vote for or against assisted dying. Vote for or against facial recognition. What's the next on the menu, right? If they carry on the way they're going, right, with complete disregard for fact and truth, right, but pretending that they're bothered about misinformation, we're going to end up in chaos. And if they don't uphold any election law, they've created this. I mean, is it kind of like, was there anything anywhere close to this when the radio was invented? When everyone started getting radio sets, or the telegram. But we've always had letters. I don't really think they're admitting and confessing that, what Nick Clegg said about, rushing ahead, with the platforms and technology without thinking about what they're doing. They've got themselves into a bit of a pickle. And I think some of the MPs are naive and don't really understand the implications of it. And other MPs knew exactly what was going on, like that guy, which Andrew Bridgen talks about, who said, shut up, Andrew, you can have anything you want, there are darker, stranger forces out there, if this parliament is not in control of what's going on in the law, then who is, Sergey Brin, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, this is the problem. So, I mean, at the moment now, I'm expecting, I can't see these MPs and main parties winning if they're not going to admit and accept that representation of the people at 1949, they're fucked. because once everyone starts getting into political parodies when it comes to election time, that I think they're all you're going to find out that they're going to have, it's not going to be about what political party you're on. It's going to be like some kind of like megastar Trump, sort of like, Donald Trump megastar people, Farage, and I think they'll end up getting shot down. And I don't mean like, shot down with a gun. I mean like, like this is why Putin, look, Putin, right? Russians aren't renowned for their, movies. The Americans are renowned for their movie action films, right? Russians aren't necessarily renowned for, like action films, right? Putin's banned it all. I mean, Putin's banned. You can't take the piss out of Putin, supposedly, so I've heard in Russia. You can't do parodies of Putin, right? You can't have them. So I think Putin knows the power of media and parody and influence and that, and things like American movies and so forth. He's banned it all. So, he clearly to Putin is as powerful resource to have as his army is, as the Russian army, like, hardware, missiles, drones, tanks, bombs, guns, because the name of the game is to defeat political opponents, get them out, right? Now, Putin, can do that either by blowing them up, blowing them to smithereens, right? That gets them out. But, if you can just get them out by, getting them voted out and not getting voted in, then why do you need to blow them up, right? So, unless they go skulking around like Tony Blair and around the rims, right, on the rimmer. It's Putin is good evidence from what he's done in Russia for what he's afraid of or frightened of, or what can beat or defeat him. And I think that I don't think once the independent forces kick in this election time, I don't think people like Tice, Farage, any of these main people probably are going to survive the social media onslaught, unless Keir Starmer pulls out some sort of law, which this is maybe what they're talking about, the right to protest. I think that they'll have Parliament. The only way that these main parties are going to survive now is through becoming mega celebrities like Elon Musk. And they can only survive as mega celebrities if they're popular on the positive, not the negative, right? And they've already broken the law themselves by ignoring that 1949 Act, because Farage ignored it when he did Talking Pints, right? And I think that they'll have to come up with a new one and say, oh well, now we can enforce it because now we made this new law, because like they won't admit that they should have been enforcing it earlier with the old law, because then they're all corrupt and they all broke the law themselves, right, by ignoring it. So I think Starmer or whoever is going to be in charge instead of Starmer is going to have to just come out with some stupid law. I won't be surprised if Starmer, I know that, he claims he's against free speech, he's all for free speech, right? Starmer claims that he's for free speech and, political stuff, but if he's going to bring some protest laws down, they won't survive. Starmer will have to do some kind of Putin law where you can't mock them, or they're just not going to survive at all. I don't think, not as political parties or celebrities. And who will then? I'm not sure. This is the thing. I don't know. I think that it'll end up becoming like a mega war. I think it'll become a chaotic war, and like, you know, a lot of reform people might get in, but, you know, only while these, like, you see, all these people are like voting for reform now and are in these reform, you know, like fan clubs and so forth, are only in it because like they've been told that what reform did is lawful. They're not being told the truth, right? So they're all living on the fairy tale pretend, and they think that, oh, it's the next best thing is going to save them from the Labour Party. But, you know, what direction are they going to go in? How you know, why would you want Farage and Tice in charge when they've been breaking the law, right? Because that's just more law breaking. And then they're going to have like fierce opponents, and they're going to have to try and stop those fierce opponents from rubbishing them, so that their reform, I don't think reform will end up being, you know, this sort of saviour against Keir Starmer's Agenda 2030 and all that, because I don't think that any of the, it's like Tommy Robinson, you know, Tommy Robinson is really popular, but then he's still having to do these certain things because he's getting all these threats and stuff like that, right? And he's at risk. I think that, you know, that they'll have to do some sort of law, like, or do something like Putin's doing, which makes you wonder, you know, is that part of their plan, you know, to you know, get it all under control and then merge with Putin and China to the whole world order thing, you know? Was it all a bluff? We'll see anyway. We'll see what happens. But at the moment, I can't vote for any party or candidate who is breaking the law. Even if like there might be a possibility of them saving us, because it isn't saving us, you know. I you know, so I don't know what's going to happen at the polling station. I've only got one vote anyway, so, you know, when it comes around to voting, and this is for local council elections that's on now anyway, not for main parties, but when the next general election comes around, I mean, if they don't uphold that Representation of the People Act 1949, then I don't know what's going to happen, because I genuinely think there's going to be it's like a movie war, isn't it, really? It effectively is like the movie. It's like, you see, we had the movies. You see, all the movies were, you go to the cinema and watch the movie and the hero saves the day, right? But now everyone is making a movie, and it's like a producer and a director, and they're directing their movie. It's like movie versus movie, and it's like film versus film. It's like motion picture. It's like picture versus picture. The canons, you know, it's almost like Canon camera instead of candid camera. Canon camera. So I think, and that's what Putin's out. You see, Putin's out. He's like, oh, I'm all out. You know, like, whereas Trump is like, Trump's, I'm all in. You know, Trump's like, I'm all in. You know, he's like, we'll get the parodies, we'll get the Trump carnival going round. You know, we'll have, you know, the big Trump doll shagging the, you know, the Statue of Liberty, and then we'll have Trump, you know, with a big devil cartoon, and, you know, Trump on South Park, and Trump's all in. He's like, yeah, let's do this. Like, you know, let's have a fucking, you know, he could be like, you know, Tom and Jerry, you know. It's like, I'll be, you know, or I'll be the Jerry Mouse, you know, whatever. You know, Trump's like all in, you know. Draw me with, you know, mouse ears, you know. Trump's like all cards on the table. He's like, all in, let's do this. You know, we're fucking America, you know. We've got Steven Spielberg, we've got, you know, George Lucas. They're all in, but Trump's like, so yeah, Trump's in, and Putin's like, no, I'm out. Putin's like, you know, he's got no cards on the table. He's like, no, I'm all out. You know, he's like, I'm not in. I'm not playing. You know, we're not doing political parodies. We're not having them in Russia. You can't do them. I'm not playing. Putin's not playing. He's like, no, we'll play with the hardware. We'll play with the tanks, the missiles, the guns. You know, we'll get the fucking nuclear weapons out. But, you know, I'm not playing. It's like, I'm not playing tiddlywinks, right? I'm not playing, you know, movies. You know, I'm not playing charades or whatever. He's all out. Because maybe Russia's like, you know, I don't know. Are they crap at it? You know, it's like, oh, we'll do triathlon, but we're not going to do like long jump because we're crap at it. You know, it's like Russia. So what are you good at? Well, we're good at missiles and tanks and nuclear weapons, but we're shit at films. But I don't really want to say that because, like, I'm not saying that Russians are shit at films, but some Russian films are my favourite films and really good. But like we're talking about like big movies. Like we're not talking about sort of like sports, because Russians are good at sports. We're talking about like action films, right? So like Arnold Schwarzenegger style films, right? Russians aren't known for their commando, Running Man, Predator, Top Gun. They're not known for their worldwide movies, right? And that's what it's going to come to with this political warfare now and all these political parodies. It's going to get like into the full-on fucking AI warfare, political massive hard hitters, right? And Trump's like fucking, he's like in the corner of the fucking boxing ring, right? He's fucking already, he's getting rubbed up with a towel. He's like getting someone's putting his gloves on for him. He's like, okay, let's go. Let's fucking do this, right? He's in, even if Starmer's at the moment, he's like, he's like in the Days position. He's like, he's got the little birdie Tweety birds going around his head. He's got the dazed and confused sort of thing. He's been hit so many times that he's not sure what the fuck's going on. And he's either about to collapse, or he's about to, have the whole match banned, or I don't know, maybe he's going to pick up the telephone and, telephone someone's going to fucking come in with drones and, fucking, I don't know, maybe the Joker's going to come in with like a gas canister and, gas everyone. Fuck knows, but Putin's out. Putin's not playing. He's not playing, Putin's like, I'm not playing, I'm not playing movies. We're not doing a movie war, I'm out, so, I mean, what can you say? Putin's not playing. He doesn't want to play. He doesn't want to play with the software. If it's hardware, Putin's all in for the hardware, but he's no good with the software, right? He's like, oh, I play with hardware. Yes, we play with hardware. Gun, tank, bomb, but no, I'm not playing with software. I'm not going to play with the, the movies, Kajagoogoo, whatever. They're out, So, I mean, this is it. And it seems like I think like Japan and China are all in for it because they're like, whoop whoop Gangnam Style, they're all in the fucking, hey, sexy lady. They've even got like Channel 4. Maybe that woman from Channel 4 News is a secret Chinese agent, right? Maybe she's an undercover secret Chinese agent. Maybe Sir Ken McCallum needs to investigate her. Maybe she's working for the Chinese government, doing the Whoop Whoop Gangnam Style, dance, I'm not sure. But, I think China are all in for it. I think they're up for it. They're up for the movie war. Whether they're, I don't think they can take Trump on. That's not exactly Top Gun, but, they've got whatever. They've got, they've got Monkey Magic, Tripitaka, Pigsy, they've got a few good movies, Bruce Lee. But then, this is the thing. Bruce Lee, you had Bruce Lee, but what happened to Bruce Lee? This is the problem, apparently he took paracetamols. So, I don't know what is actually going to happen because, I don't think John Healey's going to be the answer either with his submarines. So, it's quite interesting. And then we've got like, Sergey Brin, Google. They're the ones who are controlling the whole. They've got control of this new thing, this whole technology, right? And there was like consent to accept. So you tell me. You tell me what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. But Trump's out. I mean, Putin's out, not Trump. Putin's out. He's not playing. So I don't know. Maybe Putin will just end up, watching the, probably get some popcorn I think Putin probably will just end up getting some popcorn and a fucking, Pepsi and watching it all, and watching, everyone obliterate each other with like political parodies. And then after it's finished, maybe, then he might come in with the hardware. We'll see.